Thank you, Jim. I'd like to welcome the panel up as well. So for the next 35 minutes, we have your attention, please, for a very distinguished and experienced panelists. I'd like to take your seats. As Jim said, this is about getting acceptance, getting adoption. Because we've heard, over the last 3 days, we provide you with a lot of technology. We are your pit crew in supporting it. I know you, many of you, at least, you have the talent to build really innovative applications that make the most of data. But that's only part of the equation of success. If you don't get adoption and acceptance, if you don't get that embracing of the systems at all levels of an organization, well, that innovation is going to fail. So that's what we're going to discuss now with the panel. In their experience, what have they done to encourage acceptance and adoption? So I'd like you to introduce each of yourselves. Gerd, if you'd like to share something about yourself and your organization, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Gerd Kanicznik. I'm one of the members of the Asperg team, the Austria Spar International team, a very, very small company, our holding company of the Spar Austria group located in Switzerland. I'm a member of the CEO Collegium and also a member of the architect team of the whole group, and I'm responsible for the international software development in our business. By the way, we rent our software to our countries, so invention is at least not a financial burden for our countries. So I want to hand over to Neil.
Thank you. I'm Neil Sarkar. I am the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Rhode Island Quality Institute, where we basically run the state's health information exchange, simply put, the state's longitudinal medical record. I'm also a professor of medicine tenured at Brown University. So I have a perspective both from academia as well as in the trenches. And it's always exciting for me to identify opportunities to go from one community to the other.
Ed.
Hi, my name is Ed Marr. I've been trying to figure IT out for about 40 years. I've spent about 20 years in government, 20 years in the private sector, most of that in health IT. And I think by this point, I know quite a bit about what I don't know. And some of the things that I think we'd like to talk about is the scars, the mistakes we've made, and what we've learned over the course of that time.
Thanks, Ed. Now, we all know that developing and delivering the application only takes you so far. And so I'd like to go back to Gerd. Gerd, what stories can you tell, particularly about culture and the kind of things you need to do to make sure you get that kind of acceptance across your organization? Because with 25 people from many countries supporting 90,000 colleagues across the stores, you've got quite a range of problems to solve there.
Okay, I'm now about 28 years now in this company, so I'm really a member of the team from the very beginning when we started in these countries. So I learned a lot about the mentality of these people, where we have to care for, what we can force them, what we absolutely not can force them, where we have to be very successful or careful to try out. At least our objective is to do more or less the same procedures in all the countries, because we have the same software there, highly parameterized, sure, but we must be very, very careful, because people are very proud, and we come from another country. We come from Switzerland. Oh, this is we come with the airplane. Not a good idea for them. So it's a very interesting job, but I think we did it quite good until now, because all of these countries are running very, very successful in their way. And what we do now in the next years, I told also yesterday, we want to bring them much more together want to harmonize these workflows much more if it's possible, optimize best of breed and so on and so on. So it's a big challenge for us.
Any particular stories, though, any particular times in your memory where that exemplifies what happens when you don't take into account culture?
Okay, we have a lot of funny stories if you want, but it really can happen that we produce a new software and it is not accepted. Full stop.
This is the reality, yeah.
This is the reality. The funny thing, and this is one of the stories perhaps I want to tell you, is when we started with e-commerce,
Yeah.
we do not speak about technique, we speak about the optimization of the processes immediately. And when we spoke about e-commerce, what is our new job in e-commerce? This is the picking job of people either in the dark store or in the shops outside. So we have to optimize this work. So our first idea was, we have to paint our shops. We have to do a map for the people who run around and pick up the merchandise to run in an optimal way around.
Okay,
so
map with colors for the pickers to fill the
Exactly.
baskets efficiently, right?
And moreover, not just paint this, but also suggest from the system how to go through the aisles
Yeah.
and find the right product in the shelves. Sometimes we have students, they have no idea, you have to lead them. So we prepared this and we failed. We failed. And I can remember I did a big presentation about this topic and a lot of people were around and very, very impressed, but at least the business did not like it.
Right.
2 years later, a guy came to me. He's a guy for the category management and told me, I saw a presentation from you. I saw that you paint the shop. And okay, we discussed a little bit about it and thought, it's 2 years old, nobody cares for this anymore. Now, this is a central part of our application. We know exactly each 10, 15 centimeters what's going on in our shop. Is this a good article? Is this a good place? Is this a good area? And so on and so on. So, okay, this is somehow invention by accident, so I don't know how I can tell you, but it's really strange. And by the way, we started with Q-commerce, quick commerce now. It is much more faster than e-commerce. There are really students who wait in our shop for the call from the customers. They have to give the message back, I will finish the picking in 10 minutes, because the guy with the bicycle comes in 10 minutes and he has to deliver within the next 15 minutes to the customer.
So integrating workflow.
Yeah, exactly. And now we will also use this, layout functionality again after more than 5 years in the shops with the original idea behind.
Wonderful, thank you. So innovation can sometimes need to find its time, its moment.
Absolutely.
And in a cultural sense, people need to be prepared for that change and know how to apply it. So moving on to Neil. Neil, you straddle both the clinical world and the academic world. As editor of JMA Open, you have quite a unique position to look at innovation, and particularly from cultural point of view, from these two angles. What kind of experience has that provided you?
Yeah, I'll reflect in that. Healthcare is a very odd business. I don't think that there'll be any folks who would question that. In that, we wake up in the morning and we'll happily log into our airline service and figure out what time my plane's going to take off. We'll go to the bank and sort out how much money do I have in there. Can I take out some money from the ATM? It's very rare a person who wakes up in the morning and goes, gee, I feel like having sepsis today. Or wouldn't it be a nice day to break a leg? Of course not. And yet, we have to build up this infrastructure that allows for the moment that something goes catastrophically wrong for that individual, no matter how small, that we're there to support them. And that's the business that we're in. And in some ways, our success is built on people not needing us except for only at that moment in time. Hospitals, doctors' offices are all built around this culture of we're here to serve you, but we really don't want you to come here because we want you to stay healthy. And so that really leads to this sort of very odd dynamic between innovation to support when people find themselves in an unfortunate situation. How do we get them from where they are now back to that healthy state? And something that we constantly challenge ourselves with is how do we keep people in that healthy state as long as we can? And so that means from a vision perspective, our vision's big. We want to keep all people healthy all the time and out of hospitals. Hospitals don't like that kind of a vision. But we also want to identify those items that can be very specific and very narrow and that are meaningful. Everyone's been talking about patient engagement for the last 60 years, and it's an area that we miserably fail at. And it's something that my organization spends a lot of time thinking about. For every individual who logs into our patient portal, why? What can we provide for them that makes them feel that they're part of their healthcare journey? And then when they go away, hopefully 3, 5, 7 years, they don't need us, but when they come back, we're right there to take them to that next step.
Thank you, Neil. So Ed, more than 20 years, was it 24, 26, I can't remember, at the VA, where you said you created a lot of positions, took those positions, and led people in a new direction. So you were forming culture there. What stories can you share?
Well, you know, innovators have a hard time in healthcare. And the reason I think for that is that what we're dealing with in healthcare and health IT is we're dealing with people's lives. And so we want to be precise, and we want to be consistent, and we want to use best practice. And we tend to get into a position where we've balanced risk versus reward, and we get very comfortable there. And then someone comes along and says, let's do it differently. Let's do it a different way. And so the natural inclination in a culture, especially a large culture like the VA, is to say, look, we got good metrics, we're getting good results. Why do you want to change all this? And I used to say, just to be somewhat disruptive, I used to say, well, you know, if we didn't innovate, doctors would still be doing bloodletting for a fever. You know, someone had to come up and say, let's not bleed this guy, let's try something else. So any innovator, any change agent in healthcare has a pretty high bar. And so you got to sort of get it right. But at the same token, you do have to force it. You do have to make people see the benefit. And again, there's a whole list of things you've got to build into a culture. You have to either be there or you have to improve on. And it's interesting, it crosses domains, but it's especially important in healthcare. And there's got to be trust. You've got to sell the reasons for the change. You've got to be willing to push the envelope and then deliver results and handle the disruption. We deal with very complex systems, and so you got to do your homework. But if we all just, if there aren't innovators, if there aren't people willing to come tell a story, and then bring the data, and then bring the operational level, how you're going to do it, find the budget, make the schedule. If there aren't people willing to do that, we're just going to be static and fall behind. And I'd like to think that the United States is still one of the best places for healthcare, and that's the result of our willingness to do innovation. And the tools that we use to innovate all revolve around data, They all revolve around knowledge and understanding. But at the end of the day, we've got to be leaders. We've got to be willing to take that risk, rebalance that risk-reward kind of thing.
And you talk about people, so I'm going to go back to Gerd. People at the heart of it, people who are going to use the system, people who are going to understand and behave differently perhaps, because of course people do as they do because of their identity. Their behavior is a reflection of that. What stories can you share, Gerd?
Okay, for us it's the best situation when ideas come from the business itself.
Okay.
Sure. Because of the different majority of the countries, it could happen that either the smallest or the biggest country has a very good idea. So what we established is something like expert teams, which people from all over these countries to share at least the information about these ideas. Or we have also something like a idea mailbox or something. So also people from the shops they have an idea now with whom I could speak about this. So I do not speak about, they put it in and we promise them you will get an answer within the next 3 hours. Just we understood your idea or we understood your complaint or what else.
Giving that a quick acknowledgement.
Very, very quick knowledge. We understood you, we care for it.
Right.
So if we get this information or we get these ideas from the business, more or less it's okay for us to do something, to produce something, and we will more or less successful. Much more important is, what are you doing with this new functionality now? How do you bring it to the next countries?
Yep.
And this is very important to tell the top management about it and tell the top management we do not invent new functionality. We invented new business processes. We optimized the business processes for you. So if you want to use it, then you can be sure that somebody will like it. And we are very focused on, if we do new functionality, it doesn't help if it's a new statistics. Senseless. It must be useful for the individual guy who uses this tool. If he has no advantage out of it, he will not use it.
Yes, you have to bring advantages to the target user.
To the target user, yes.
Yeah, make their lives better. And I like the point that you made about bringing everybody together for that, do it all together, because when Geoffrey Moore talked about the different zones, there was definitely that production environment where everyone had to do it together to maintain that production. Because when we talked about people, Neil, you would extend that definition of people to the patient and maybe even the carers, the charities, and all those around that patient. So what stories can you tell about people and change and innovation and acceptance?
Absolutely, and I'll come back to, just for a moment, being an editor-in-chief of a journal.
Right.
And one thing, so this is a life skill for everyone in the room, don't ever pick a fight with an academic. Because the academic always thinks that they're right. And the reason that an academic goes about the world that way is because of the rigor, the reproducibility, parameters, and ways that they go about the world to prove that this is something that will actually work. And actually, peers have acknowledged the importance of that work. And whether we're talking about mumps and M that led to cachet, et cetera, I mean, those are all came from academia.
Yes.
And are things that we build on. And academics are living in the future. And so they have one foot and a view 30 years from now. Is it practical today? Of course not. And so therein lies some of the challenge. When we're talking about people and practices, it's really important, at least in our sector in healthcare, is remembering why we're doing what we're doing. I have this famous question that I ask of every medical student, a first-year medical student. So why are you here? Why are you interested in becoming a medical doctor? And you pass the interview, and invariably, over the 15 or so years I've asked this question, there's been maybe 3 students out of the however many thousand students I've interacted with who've come up with the right answer, which is it begins and ends with the patient's story.
Right.
And so that's what we have to ground ourselves when we're thinking about the people, the actors, in a complex ecosystem like healthcare. It's how those actors interact with each other and for what purpose. And that purpose in our sector, very clearly and simply put, it's about the patient. And so each thing that we talk about, each innovation that we talk about, each paper that I look and consider for publication in my journal is how will this make a patient's life better, or give us some more insight to how we can move this patient along on their care journey.
Thank you. So Ed, I think you can pick up on that point from the kind of care that veterans get. Indeed, you yourself.
I'm a consumer I'm a service-disabled veteran myself, and but you know, when I first got to the VA, I tried to figure out why the VISTA is seen as the best healthcare system in the world. And of course, many of you heard the story. The reason is really simple, because it was designed by the users for their patients. They sat down with IT people. Interesting part of the story is that higher management didn't even know about it. It was this underground railroad where they just simply, technologists sat down with clinicians and said, what do you need from IT? That is literally how it got produced. And to take that to the next step, so now you have a stable, pretty robust system. It works. People are happy with it. How do you innovate? How do you change? Well, the first impulse is, hey, I have a good idea, and top down it to the organization. And that almost never works, ever, in my experience. What works is to get the clinician who's pretty happy with what they got, but always has this, but it would be nice if we could do this. Have the technology people keep their mindset in the case of, it's not about the technology. It's never about the technology. It's about the people who use it and the people who benefit from it. And just to have them listen first, and then try to replicate what they're asking for. And that's the only way, in my experience, innovation ever works. It's got to be a response to an impulse coming from the people who use it or who benefit from it. And you know, I can tell you any number of great situations where every top-down idea was probably a fairly good one. But when it's forced on a culture that is used, as you say, the academics, that are used to being consulted, that are used to being seen as the subject matter expert, if you force a solution on them, they become the best IV&V experts in the world. They will find every flaw with it. They will find every problem with it if they're not consulted. So it's really pretty simple in how to do innovation. And that's to listen to what the folks are asking for and try your best to give it to them, you know? And that mating of subject matter experts, end users, and the IT people who are doing it. If that mating of that group, to my experience, it works every time.
So again, going back to Gerd. So we talked about culture, we talked about people, and trust is a key element of it. What about data? How can data play a role in this adoption and acceptance?
I want to tell you another story. We had a project in the quality control department in Croatia. They had an old application, but it did not run well. The number of shops increased, and it was too slow, and so on and so on. And when I checked this project, this is nothing special. So why should we do this? I do not like it. And then we spoke with these guys, or very interesting ladies, by the way. They are responsible for the cleanness of the shops, the hygienic situation in the shops. So laboratories come there and do tests there
So
everywhere.
they put spot test to make sure it's
And
clean.
they go back and we get the results, and
Yep.
the machine should, by the way, learn in the future which shops are critical, which are not critical, where we have to do more tests, perhaps once a week, and so on and so on. We started with the analysis of the data. Okay, quite interesting for us because it's not merchandise. These are analyses, these are tests, a lot of chemical things. I don't know what else. And at the end, we told them, okay, we want to do it fully paperless.
Okay.
And this was the innovation now for them. And we have been so successful with them. This means that the laboratory come in the shop, they get its PDA, they log in with their code in the PDA, they get the list of the tests what they have to do. So for example, they take a knife and do the test on the knife, and they do a picture of the knife. Or they take the fingers of an employee, they scan the barcode on the sticker or what here, so we know exactly who is it.
Yep.
And 2 days later, okay, we get the results and we have to know, okay, we have to react on this. So everything is done fully with the electronic, no paper, no signing anymore somewhere, much more faster, much more accurate. Okay, this is data, okay, done by Iris, what else, sure.
Thank you. Neil, how does data play a role in your life?
So I often talk about the patient's story and humans as storytellers and physicians and other members of the care team telling the patient's story. The challenge with that, however, is that humans love to tell stories with lots of colors.
Lots of colors.
Lots of colors, so lots of detail and lots of things. This is wonderful from a storytelling perspective, horrible from an AI perspective.
Okay.
It's why we have to invest so much in natural language processing, and we can't get clinicians, no matter how hard we've tried. And there's many reasons why it won't work, but just fill out the spreadsheet. This is all we care about. And so when we think of what we do as a health information exchange is we amalgamate pieces of stories, put that together so we actually can tell you, here's the whole story about this individual. And then what we've learned is that when we talk to groups that use our system the most, we say, so what do you use it for? And I'll pick on a pharmacist. And so a pharmacist will log into our system and say, I'm going in and I'm looking at trying to figure out, well, what medications this patient who has presented, and let's say I'm at a federally qualified health center, what medications is this patient on? And so they'll rifle through the record and they'll look at the medications. And then they'll go and say, I also want to know what conditions this person has. I want to know what their living conditions are. And I want to know what problems, what allergies they might have so that I can internalize as that pharmacist.
And provide context.
Context. And so one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing, and so I'm a technologist. I know how to, I have a doctorate in informatics, so code, and I can solve anything with data. But what's really important and what I got in my training, and I still go back to, is understanding what people are using the data for.
Right.
And so a lot of what we do is watch people. So that pharmacist, just watching and observing her, going through and picking things out, well, we can solve that and make it so that she doesn't have to go to 7 different tabs. We can pull all of that together. There's a technology called Smart on Fire that'll let you go in and create an app, put that on top of, something called Viewer. We can actually put it on there and actually pull it all together in one spot so that a clinician can go to one place and get all that information together. And so it's all out there, and it's the full story. And some clinicians, some patients, some individuals will want to look at that whole story. But many will just want to look at just a facet of that story for that moment in time. And I think one of the hardest things that we have to constantly remember is that humans have their own way of interpreting the world. And each human has their own way of getting at the right answer. There's not necessarily one way to get there, but understanding the different paths that an individual might want to take and piecing together the information in a way that makes sense so they understand the part of the story that they can make a difference for that individual is really important.
I like that rich tapestry of storytelling that comes together to bind people together to get acceptance and understanding of innovation. And at the VA, you have so many people in so many levels of authority. How do you get that kind of data back from that organization?
Well, we have all the traditional, they have all the traditional means of self classes and programs, development programs. They all exist, and they're wonderful. What we've done over the years at the VA, though, is try to explain to people there's a difference between management and leadership. There's a course that was developed there called Leadership VA, and it's senior managers who have been selected, 75 a year, I think, and they go through a one-year mid-career course. And I used to teach a small component of that on leadership and what's the difference between being a real good Uber manager and being a leader. And they're two totally different roles. But one of the things you look for in leadership is this idea of what I do is important. I need to learn new skills. I'm a very successful manager, I wouldn't be here. I now need to learn a whole new set of skills in terms of the next potential development in my career. And we examine what leadership really is. And there's a couple of core components. And it's the realization that, first of all, as a leader, you can't do anything without the people who actually implement. And you learn quickly that giving orders doesn't often work. Actually, it seldom works. You need to inspire. You need to model. You need to demonstrate. And so,
And when you say model, do you mean model?
You model the behaviors you want
Model,
to have people. You need, if you want them to take ownership of what they do, you need to model that. You need to say, I take ownership of what I do, and here's what that ends up meaning.
And with the KPIs that measure that, the kind of data that measures that, reflects that behavior?
Well, again, at the end of the day, it's always about results, but it's not about your results. It's about the people who work for you. It's about their results. And what do you do? I always like to go back to what they teach second lieutenants in the Marine Corps. And they put a 21-year-old young man or woman, and they say, you're responsible for these 30 people. And the most important thing that you are responsible for as a Marine lieutenant, second lieutenant, is the condition of their feet. You need to be the person who makes sure they change their socks and keep their feet healthy, because they're not much of a Marine if they can't walk around and do it. And it's at that basic level, you need to take, as a leader, you need to take responsibility. You need to demonstrate the things you want them to do and take ownership. And one of the things that they teach is innovation. So, I've always carried that forward with me is, every Marine is a rifleman, no matter what you do. And every Marine knows that if the guy above them gets taken out, it's their job, and they step into it. And that second lieutenant learns to be a leader by being the servant. And again, it is very useful to the individual to play with that in how they conduct their life and how they conduct their business. So, I think it's about the things that Mr. Reagan said about, you have to have a vision, you got to be passionate about it, and you got to stay focused. I think that's a great way he started that, I think it's a great way to finish that, is that applies to all of us in everything we do. You got to know what you want to do, you got to be passionate about it, and then you got to stay focused on until you get the results you want.
Thank you, Ed. I think that's a good way of bringing us to a close. Though, just before, I'm going to ask the audience for their patience, because I have one more question. But before I say that, I'm going to wrap up a little bit. We talked about how you gain acceptance, how you gain adoption. And a lot of that's to do with the culture, the people, the data that you use, staying focused on the change and the value add to the end users, make their lives better. You've talked in the past about managing imperfection. So you can't always go with perfection. And you've talked about accepting the change coming from other people, being open to innovation yourself, and gaining that responsibility amongst the people that you're trying to change. So all of these things are key factors, I think, to gaining acceptance. But starting with you, if you met yourself of 20 years ago, what good advice would you give yourself?
Okay, I would like to be as consequent as I was, but in a more diplomatic way.
Okay, so a bit of diplomacy. I think my colleagues might say the same of me. I'd share that. Neil, 20 years ago,
20 years ago, I was probably one of the most risk-averse people out there. But set a vision that is unattainable and make a plan from that. Because then you can set out a vision that is just beyond your realm of practicality, and then you can find the passion and the focus and make measurable progress towards that vision.
Think big.
Don't be
and
afraid.
Measure and take those steps.
Yeah.
Ed, 20 years ago.
20 years ago, I would say be more proactive about your capabilities, your goals. Be more proactive about taking charge of your life and being open to what was going on. I was a good follower, and I realized that I needed to become a leader to move to where I wanted to be. And I should have been more aggressive about that 20 years ago, but...
Okay, so taking that edge, that risk, and be willing to move forward. Well, I think there are many lessons here for us. I thank the panel, Ed, Neil, Gerd, thank you very much, and I thank you for your time, because actually, this is the beginning of the conversation. Now we need to carry it on ourselves, so thank you very much. Thank you to the panel.